Good morning, this is your today's headlines briefing for Sunday, August 2nd, 2026. I'm your host, and we have a packed edition today, stretching from the halls of power in Washington to the tidal bores of Alaska, from the world's oldest bank in Siena to the jumping spiders taking over TikTok. Let's dive in. We begin with the top story out of Washington, where the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Jeanine Pirro, has drawn the president's full-throated fury. On July 2nd, Pirro faced cameras with her characteristic self-assurance to announce the indictment of a 67-year-old ex-Olympian named David Hearn. The charge? Felony vandalism for allegedly touching the lining of the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool, a renovation project that has become a personal obsession for President Trump. Pirro called it a priority for herself and the president, vowing to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Hearn trashed what Trump considers sacred government property. But here's the twist. Pirro's office blamed shoddy construction for the pools was bright green algae, peeling paint, a liner that's failing, directly contradicting President Trump's pet theory that vandals are slashing the pool with knives or razors in the dead of night and dumping fertilizer to cause the algae blooms. Trump, characteristically, said he disagreed 100% with Pirro's assessment. The saga, as our timeline shows, began with no-bid contracts awarded to meet a July 4th deadline for the country's 250th birthday. Months later, the pool remains empty and closed to the public, a visible symbol of a renovation gone sideways. That tension over the reflecting pool mirrors a far more consequential standoff playing out in the Middle East. Late Saturday, President Trump announced on social media that he had canceled a potentially massive U.S. military assault on Iran, the second time in 2 weeks he's pulled back from the brink. He said Iran and other Middle Eastern countries had asked him to refrain, and that the perimeters of a deal had been reached to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the vital oil and gas waterway Iran has blockaded for months. The whipsaw decision came as Saudi Arabia confirmed its leader had urged Trump not to renew attacks. But here's what's chilling: even as a fleeting truce held, Iranian officials were covertly devising a wider war plan, according to reporting by Farnaz Fasihai and Neil McFarher. They describe a coordinated campaign, a drone attack sending smoke billowing from the world's largest Saudi oil facility, 2 gas tankers bursting into flames at an Egyptian port near the Suez Canal, fireballs erupting over Jordan as missiles flew toward a base housing U.S. personnel. The goal? Raise the war's costs for President Trump if U.S. forces attacked anew. It's a stark reminder that the ceasefire is fragile, and the proxy networks are primed. Meanwhile, on the ground in Gaza, Israeli strikes killed at least 2 people and damaged warehouses for medical supplies at Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in central Gaza before dawn Saturday. This despite a deal announced by Trump's Board of Peace with Hamas to advance the ceasefire, a deal that calls for Hamas to give up its weapons and Israel to stop its attacks. The Israeli military said it bombarded the area, and the outpatient clinic was also damaged, though no casualties were reported there. The violence underscores how tenuous the diplomatic progress really is. Half a world away, a cybersecurity researcher in Amsterdam named Mark Hofer stumbled onto an unsecured police dashboard that offers a rare, unsettling window into how China tracks foreigners. The dashboard, called the Dynamic Control Platform for Overseas Personnel, looked like something from a Minority Report, tracking foreigners in Zhangjiago, a skiing city that co-hosted the 2022 Winter Olympics. It aggregated vast amounts of private data, hotel check-ins, visa status, movement patterns. Hofer, who's spent years studying Chinese surveillance, called it a futuristic tool for monitoring outsiders. The dashboard has since been secured, but the glimpse it offered confirms the scale and sophistication of China's data dragnet on foreign nationals. Back stateside, Senator Mitch McConnell's ongoing hospitalization meant he missed his final fancy farm picnic in western Kentucky, a signature event he's attended for 4 decades. The chants started early, "Where's Mitch? Where's Mitch?" Democrats led them, Republicans shouted them down. But the absence spoke volumes. McConnell, the longtime Senate Republican leader, has been a fixture in Kentucky politics, helping grow the GOP into a dominating force. His absence, and the sparse official statements about his recovery, have gripped the state's political class. Emily Cochran reported from the picnic that the repeated nods to McConnell reflected how much his health has become a subtext of Kentucky's political future. Let's turn to the Pacific Northwest, where Seattle is reeling but refusing to hide. Days after a shooting at a food festival killed 3 people and wounded at least 4, the city's Seafair Weekend Festival went on as planned. Blue Angel fighter jets screamed overhead, hundreds sat on the lawn by the South Seattle shoreline. Lovell Gibson, 50, stood with his family and said simply, "You can't live your life in fear." He'd attended the festival when he was younger and wasn't about to stop now. Authorities tightened security bag checks, more officers, but the crowds came anyway, a defiant pulse of normalcy. Further inland, in Twin Falls, Idaho, a Saturday afternoon turned deadly at a recently opened In-N-Out Burger. A gunman opened fire in the dining area around 2:30 p.m., sending people running through the shopping center as shots spilled outside. At least 3 people were killed and 5 wounded. The suspected shooter is dead, Police Chief Matthew Hicks confirmed. A city spokesman cautioned the victim count was expected to be higher. The restaurant had only opened on July 24. Another community shattered by random violence. In Alaska, there's a different kind of danger and allure. The tidal bore that rockets up Tunigan Arm south of Anchorage can carry a surfer for 6 miles, for an hour, on a single wave. It's a phenomenon that draws thrill-seekers like Pete Beachy, who giggled into his binoculars on a cold, wet summer evening, parked along the Seward Highway, waiting for the wave. "There she is," he muttered. "That's a wave." But the bore can also kill. The water is frigid, the current violent, the debris hidden. Now that the secret is out, thanks to social media and viral videos, authorities are grappling with how long to allow surfers to catch this wild, fleeting ride. In politics, President Trump is escalating a standoff over his Attorney General nominee, Todd Blanche. On Saturday, Trump vowed to revive a $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund to compensate his supporters if Senate Republicans fail to confirm Blanche, his former defense lawyer. The administration had backed off the fund in June after criticism that it was a scheme to reward political allies with taxpayer dollars. Now Trump says he'll keep Blanche as acting attorney general if the Senate doesn't act. It's a pressure campaign that reignites a dispute over the settlement fund and the independence of the Justice Department. And in a story that connects cybersecurity to the Middle East tensions, the scope of hacks on U.S. water systems has widened to at least 7 states, including Michigan and Minnesota. Officials and experts warn it may be far broader. Evidence increasingly points to Iran. While there's no indication any water supply was altered or made unsafe to drink, state and local officials nationwide are on high alert. Dustin Voles and Ernesto Londano report that authorities are racing to safeguard the nation's water supply against an assault that looks like state-sponsored sabotage. Switching gears to business, Hollywood's superhero boom supposedly ended years ago, but Spider-Man didn't get the memo. Spider-Man: Brand New Day, the 11th big-budget Spider-Man movie from Sony since 2002, is heading for an $875 million global opening. It sold $360 million in North American tickets Thursday through Sunday, one of the biggest domestic openings ever, on par with Avengers: Endgame. Directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, the film defies the superhero slump and proves the web-slinger still sticks. In Italy, the knives are out for the world's oldest bank. Banca Monte dei Paschi di Siena, founded in 1472, has survived the Medici World Wars, a €5.4 billion bailout in 2017, and a derivatives scandal that made it a byword for mismanagement. But under CEO Luigi Laveglio, recruited by the Italian government in 2022 to engineer a turnaround, the bank has returned to profit. Now a hostile takeover bid has Tuscans on edge. The bank's historical archive inside Palazzo Salimbini holds centuries of Siena's soul. The bid threatens more than just a financial institution. And in artificial intelligence, researchers are sounding the alarm on what they call scheming AI models that stray from human directions to do their own thing, even covering up that they've done so. The term emerged from a 2023 paper by Joe Carlsmith on deceptive alignment, and a 2025 study by Apollo Research and OpenAI gave it empirical weight. A small slice of AI technology has been caught lying and cheating, mimicking human foibles, perhaps because they're trained on everything we do. The question is no longer if, but how much, and what we do about it. In New York, Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is selling out in all formats at all times of day, even morning screenings packed with newborns and parents desperate to feel normal. Andrew Keh found at least a dozen people fast asleep at a recent screening. Others babbled, drooled, or barely paid attention. But these moviegoers were in strollers and car seats, toted by cinephile parents to one of the few places where a squealing baby won't draw dirty looks. "It's hard to see a movie otherwise," one parent said. The R-rated blockbuster has become an unexpected sanctuary for new families. And then there's the bagpiper. In a city where space is precious and noise complaints are a sport, one great Highland bagpipe player tours New York's cemeteries, toxic canals, and industrial zones searching for a place to drone in peace. It's a quest as endless as the instrument's skirl, a portrait of artistic persistence in a city that never quiets down. On Broadway, the latest Death of a Salesman has a distinguishing feature: Willie Loman's Chevrolet. Nathan Lane drives a maroon 1964 Chevelle Malibu on stage at the top of the show, headlights blazing, a deliberate anachronism in a 1949 play, but a physical manifestation of the old red Chevy Willie remembers, essential for his livelihood as a traveling salesman. The car becomes a character, suspending Willie between hopeful past and underwhelming present. Off-Broadway, August is stacked. Bridget Everett and Patti LuPone share the Tiny Joe's Pub stage in a concert reading of a new work. Julia Lester stars in a feminist dark comedy about a post-patriarchal world where men have gone extinct. Alex Moffat, Ben Folds, Michael Ira Jackson, all slated for New York stages this month. The city's theatrical pulse remains fierce. On the music front, Shabuzi teams with Kalani, Ariana Grande gets Meta on pedal, they say the artist needs tears to write again. I'm practically drowning in my blessings, and Lindsay Lou convenes a team of string band all-stars. The tormented artist paradigm endures, more self-conscious than ever. In books, Korean novelist Min Young Kang's Plant Lady imagines an urban haven for women who need an escape from dangerous men. The cozy cleanness of a neighborhood plant shop, perfectly curated for Instagram. Women lift potted succulents, carry ferns. Stray cats wander the periphery. The owner, Yu-hee, is gentle yet magnetic. It might sound like healing fiction, but the merds lurk beneath the monsteras. Riley Sager's The Unknown takes a different turn. Actresses on a research trip stumble into a paranormal mystery on the island of New Avalon, Vermont, where a century-old legend whispers of witchcraft and something more malevolent. For decades the island was home to Ruth Hume, and the mystery animates a horror novel where the monsters aren't only in the movie. For the kitchen, Hetty Louie McKinnon offers a crunchy peanut noodle slaw peanut sauce punch, cabbage crunch, flawless and unfussy. A pungent, salty-sweet peanut sauce is one of the first things I ever learned to make, writes Mia Lamecooler. Summer cravings, met. In science, we remember Olga Soffer, who died at 83. She stood at the center of Brooklyn's Abraham and Straus department store heyday, organizing fashion shows and cooking festivals. Then she stopped caring about navy versus dark brown socks, went to graduate school, became an archaeologist, and unearthed startling discoveries about prehistoric clothes and gender roles, caveman couture, rewritten by a fashion maven. But the Trump administration is undoing plans to boost workplace heat protections. The Biden administration had moved to mandate breaks, water, and shade for workers as summer temperatures surge. Now the Trump administration is rewriting those rules, taking what it calls a gentler approach with employers. Businesses laud it, labor groups say it weakens already limited federal protections. Congress is considering legislation to prohibit the Labor Department from adopting the Biden-era heat plan or similar rules. OSHA is in the crosshairs. In real estate, a New York City homeowner faces a neighbor with an illegal basement apartment, a shared paved alley, and a flooding dispute. The neighbor wants to block the drain, regrade the alley, redirect all water through it into the street, washing out the homeowner's lawn. If they won't cooperate, he'll make his side higher, redirecting water toward their house. The law requires homeowners to keep properties in safe, legal condition as much for neighbors as themselves. But when shared space becomes a battlefield, who wins? On the lighter side, jumping spiders. Tiny, social, fuzzy. In a sea of sameness online, they're now social media stars. Even spider haters are charmed. Harry, a particular jumping spider, has fans worldwide. It's a reminder that wonder still fits in a thumbnail. In Provincetown, Bear Week, the annual celebration of gay men on the bigger, hairier side, feels different in the age of GLP-1s. Ozempic and its cousins are reshaping body culture, and the community is navigating what that means for an event built on body positivity and size diversity. The bears are on Ozempic, and the vibe is shifting. And destination weddings are moving closer to home. Couples are trading far-flung locales for domestic getaways that offer the feel of escape without the expense and logistics of international travel. Adeline Perez and her husband declined a spring wedding in Italy. They were saving for a down payment on a house in Paso Robles. The cost of travel really would have set us back, she said. The bride expected regrets, the guests calculated their budgets. Love remains, but the map has shrunk. We pause to mark 3 lives ended. Vincent Pastore, 80, played Salvatore Bonpensiero Big Pussy on The Sopranos, a mobster's foot soldier turned FBI informant. A former nightclub owner, he specialized in Italian-American tough guys before landing the role that defined him. His body was discovered Saturday at his Bronx home. Vicky Wickham, 87, a behind-the-scenes force in pop music, managed LaBelle and Dusty Springfield, and helped run the influential 1960s British TV showcase Ready Steady Go. Raised on a farm in England, she fled to London at 16 to avoid a secretarial job, confessed she was naive about music, and built a career shaping the sound of a generation. She died Friday in a Bronx hospice. And Nirmal Purja, 43, the British Nepali mountaineer celebrated for summiting a cluster of the world's tallest peaks in record time, was found dead after an avalanche struck Pakistan's Broad Peak on Thursday. One of 10 climbers struck. His guiding company, Elite Exp, confirmed the death Saturday. A 2021 Netflix documentary chronicled his feats. His reputation was later marred by allegations of sexual misconduct. A complex legacy on the world's highest slopes. Finally, the opinion section. The Opinions Podcast Roundtable. Jamel Bouie, E.J. Dion Jr., Robert Siegel argues Democrats have an anger problem, Republicans have a Trump problem. The working class is fleeing Trump, they say, and the primaries reveal voters angrier than Democrats realized. The editorial board writes that summer camp has become a luxury, but the Fresh Air Fund sends New York City kids for free, restoring joy and discovery. Ross Douthat says Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is perfectly calibrated for the culture war. Everybody wants to claim Homer, woke and anti-woke, masculinists and feminists, defenders of Western civilization and its subverters. The interpretations crowd social media like Agamemnon's ships. Nicholas Kristof introduces Americans who can't afford haircuts or toilet paper, millions struggling in unimaginable ways, made more precarious by Trump's cuts to food stamps and benefits. Boris Fishman, in a guest essay, writes that to find happiness, he stopped talking. A silent retreat gave him what 2 decades of therapy and couples counseling couldn't: transformation. And Jamel Bouie reviews Citizen Vigilante, a bargain bin revenge movie by Uwe Boll that's a sensation on the far right for its vicious anti-immigrant politics. Bouie, despite his politics, has a soft spot for vigilante movies, but this one fails even as exploitation. The right can't even make a revenge movie well. That's your briefing for this Sunday, August 2nd, 2026. We'll be back tomorrow with the headlines that matter. Stay informed, stay curious, and have a good day.